evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Crafting and Crime. It's Tuesday. I hope you had a good Monday. I did. I finished watching this Netflix series based on a book by Harlan Coben and or Corbin. I don't know what his name is. It's called Safe. If you get a chance to watch it, oh my gosh, talk about true crime. It has an ending that you are just like, my jaw dropped. Like my jaw dropped. It's 8 episodes. Check it out. So today I'm going to review day 6 of the Scot Peterson trial, and we're going to talk about opening statements that occurred in a new trial that is so bizarre. You're like, you're always looking for something different. Well, this is going to be a little different. So I still have not figured out where this trial is. In fact, let me figure it out. Hold on. I'll be right with you. Wapaka County, Wisconsin. Okay, we're in Wisconsin. Let's talk about the Scot Peterson case first. So, day 6, I did not finish. That was what occurred on Thursday. I had not finished that yet. So, while I'm doing that, I'm going to do some diamond painting. Yes, I working on this little corner here. All these pretty flowers. Look at the butterfly. Yeah, so I'm just kind of filling in this area here. Almost done. Yes, I know. You're like, you don't get much done. You're always just talking. I know. But while I'm doing the listening to the trials, this is what I do. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here on the channel. So, let me just say before I get into the Scot Peterson trial, I am doing a giveaway on Wednesday during my Wednesday live, not during the show tomorrow, but during my Wednesday live. I'm going to change it to 7 Central Time so that you can be there if you want. You don't have to be present to win, but what you have to do before Wednesdays live is become a member or a Patreon. This is a giveaway that is exclusive to members and Patreons. So the link to become a member or a Patreon of this channel is down in the description. Your monthly donations go to help support the content of this channel. And by doing that, I like to give back to you guys. So I'm going to have a drawing for a couple of diamond paintings. Yeah, I revealed those during Sunday's live. If you want to go back and see what it is I'm giving away, you can check those out. So, all right, Scot Peterson. So on day 6, they had a medical examiner. I was a little confused by this. They already stipulated to the deaths of these students. Why do we need a medical examiner? It seems very inflammatory to me because they came in and they talked about the cause of death, the manner of death, described the injuries. We don't need to hear this. We know they were shot, they were killed. We get it. The shooter has already been convicted. But they next put on, and this guy was on the stand all day, a lieutenant colonel with the Broward Sheriff's Office. Like, there are only 2 people in the entire organization that are higher up than this guy, and that would be the colonel and the sheriff. So, lieutenant colonel, 30 plus years experience. Most of his experience is in training. He puts together curriculum, he approves curriculum for police officers, community service officers, correctional officers, civilians. Yeah, so that was really his area of expertise. But he's got an opinion, just like all of us. He's got an opinion about Scot Peterson's actions that day. So he said, you cannot wait for a team. They do train for single shooter events, or not single shooter, single officer response to a shooter. Uh, you don't wait for the SWAT team to get there. He explained that this is what happened in Columbine. We know it's what happened in Uvalde. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Uvalde. You don't wait to go in. But as the defense points out on cross-examination, you don't rush in if you don't know where the shooter is. But then this guy says, yes, but you need to find out. You need to investigate. You don't just stand there. Okay. I'm putting it in layman's terms, really. I am. Okay, so let's pour these drills out so we can do some damage. I hope your guys are crafting while you're listening to this, because that's what this show is designed for. So you have something to listen to while you're crafting. And you don't want to sit through these trials because they're very long and they're very involved. And this judge, this defense attorney is so good, and he slides some things past the judge, but not everything gets past the judge. So we'll talk about that. So what the prosecutor did with this witness, the lieutenant colonel, is first they reviewed Scot Peterson's record. Like, they printed out all the education that Scot Peterson has had since 1990. Now, Scot Peterson was an officer before 1990, but they didn't start keeping, well, the program that they used to keep this information didn't start until 1990. Before that, it was probably all paper in his file. So from 1990 forward, they've been keeping a record of all of his education. And so that's what he went over. He reviewed the active shooter, not the policy, but he reviewed the curriculum, you would say, or they were calling it the lesson plan. Now, to me, I guess it is the lesson plan, but it's the curriculum. And for a single officer, it says you need to use your senses to get a better perspective of the event. But you need to move with speed and be decisive. Those are the three important things for a single officer. So they talked about how, you don't just teach the curriculum and show the PowerPoint. No, we go and we do active shooter training. Well, where is that done at? It's done at this old building they call the Stockade. It's an old correctional facility, and so it has like a big court, like a school cafeteria would look in the middle of it, and around the outsides are where the jail cells were. And he described on cross-examination that this building was probably 500 to 700 yards long, so probably half the size of building 12, and that there's no buildings around it. Now, he did try to claim that this building has an echo, and that's part of their training, is to learn to go where, you still have to move forward, even if you hear an echo. But he said, well, isn't it correct that, these officers that you're training, they know the active shooter is going to be in this building? Well, that's true. Did you ever train where there's like multiple buildings? And he's like, well, yes, we go to schools sometimes and we train at the schools. Okay, good answer. And how many stories is this building? Just one story. Oh, okay. So he listened, they played the tape of Scot Peterson's response to the shooting, where you hear him giving commands. Like, he says, shots fired. Uh, it, it, he does say it's inside the 1200 building. He does say that on the radio. But then he also says it's near the building 7, and then you hear another officer say it's by the football field. They don't know where this is. So one of the things Scot Peterson says is everybody needs to stay 500 feet away. And he says this on the police radio. And he says, we do not train people to stay away. We've never trained anybody to stay 500 feet away from an active shooter. He goes, that's what you would do during Columbine. And that's what they did, is they stayed 500 feet away and people were murdered. So he said he agreed that the primary function of a school resource officer is to protect the kids in that school. And it's just my opinion, but I think that's what Scot Peterson was trying to do. Protect the kids. that were not in that 1200 building or 13 building or football field. He was trying to protect the other 2,000 that were behind him and all the other buildings on this 45-acre campus. He didn't know where this gunfire was coming from. Page 2. So it was this lieutenant colonel's opinion that Scot Peterson's actions that day were not consistent with his training. How so? Well, he had a duty to act. He did not. He had a duty to go toward the gunshots. He did not. He had a duty to go into the building. He did not. And he had a duty to do anything he could to disrupt that shooter. You know, hindsight's 2020. And here's my thoughts. Two adults ahead of Scot Peterson went into that building and they were killed. You know, they didn't have guns on them. Granted, I know that they didn't have guns on them, but we're talking about two large men who were adults. Nicholas Cruz is a teenager. Those two large men faced Nicholas Cruz. It did not disrupt Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz shot and killed both of them, including the teacher on the third floor. Another adult shot and killed. Yes. Now, Scot Peterson didn't know that, but I think if Scot Peterson had gone into that building to try to disrupt the shooter, he would have been killed. That's just my opinion. Okay. So he said, you're not trained to stay in one spot. So then they talk about cover and conceal. You know, you have to take cover and conceal yourself. He said, you only do that if you're being shot at. So on cross-examination, the first thing that the defense attorney did, and I thought was brilliant. This defense attorney is so good. He's like, I'd like him declared an expert. Oh, that prosecutor jumped out of her chair. She's like, sidebar. I'm like, oh. What this did is it put the judge in a very awkward position. Now this judge is faced with, he has to either rule that he is, yes, he's an expert, or no, he's not an expert. And if he says no, he's not an expert, then the jury is free to disregard everything he just said. So the judge is pretty much forced to say, yeah, he's an expert. And that's what happened. He said, okay, he's an expert. So when you have an expert, you can use hypotheticals and things like that. So it was so clever of him. Yeah. So first thing he talked about was a debriefing. Part of your education and the things that you train is that following one of these events, you do a debriefing. I was a risk manager. When you have events in a hospital, I was in a hospital. When you have events in a hospital, I always, as soon as possible, I would get in there with the people that were involved. And I would tell them, this is a safe place. This is where you talk about what were you thinking? What went wrong? What could we have done better? It's not let's point the fingers at each person. It's just so that I would give each person an opportunity to talk about what they were experiencing during the event, what their thought process was. Um, and it helps. And this guy said, yes, we do. We do recommend that there should be a debriefing after every event. Well, in this case, there was no debriefing. None. No debriefing. He admits he never talked. Nobody ever talked to Scot Peterson. Nobody ever talked to any of the Coral Springs officers. Nobody ever talked to any of the other BSO officers. Nobody ever talked to any of the kids coming out of the other buildings as far as, what they were experiencing, where the gunshots were coming from. And a lot of what this lieutenant colonel was testifying to, I, I, I get it. I get it. You move towards you deal with what what you hear, you deal with what you're experiencing through your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? You know, do you see kids running out of a building? I don't think this any of what he said applied in this situation, because in this situation you've got a fire alarm. You've got 2,900 other kids thinking this is a fire drill, and they're all exiting the building. So seeing children fleeing the building is not telling you anything. And he didn't see anybody fleeing the building, the 1,200 building. Do you see any blood? Do you see any shell casings? Do you see, anybody injured? Do if all the information you have is you're hearing shots and you don't know where they're coming from, you have to stay in place, at least according to the defense. So he does admit he never spoke to anyone, or there was never a debriefing following this incident. Now, he says, I was not the incident commander, and we get that, but the incident commander did not hold a debriefing. He would have been the one responsible to have a debriefing in the situation. That would have gone so far to get those officers together and talk about what went wrong, what could we have done better. And he admitted to the defense attorney that the radios on that day were a colossal failure during the shooting. Yeah. They were 911 calls were being routed to the wrong agency. They were the dispatcher's trying to get a hold of what's going on traffic wise. She's trying to direct some traffic to a different channel, and it was just chaos with this radios. And he also admitted, listen, these guys are human. They're human, and everyone responds to stress differently. He admitted that. So then they went over this policy, and I want to show you a picture of this policy, and I want to read it to you. Let me find it. So this policy says, this is the single officer responding to a shooting. In real-time intelligence, or if real-time intelligence exists, the sole deputy or a team of deputies may enter the area and or structure to preserve life. May. Now, he says, now after this is the policy that was in place when the shooting occurred. Yes, that was the policy. Didn't that policy change to shall after the shooting? Objection. First of all, and of course that objection was sustained because it is considered a subsequent remedial measure, something that they put into place after the fact in response to what occurred that day. Subsequent remedial measures are not admissible in court. You're not allowed to say what people put into place after the fact. You just have to deal with the facts that existed at that time. So even though it was sustained, the jury heard it. I heard it. May was changed to shall. So this guy was following his policy. Very interesting, huh? So today, the first witness was a medical examiner, another medical examiner. Cause of death, manner of death, homicide. We know this. Gunshot wounding, yeah. But the next witness, the one that's on the stand now, is the security officer that was with Scot Peterson that day. He was on the cart with him when they drove up to the 1,200 building. So I'm curious about what he has to say, and I will bring that to you tomorrow. So let's talk about this new case. Okay, so the new case has to do with some stolen reptiles. And there are some interesting facts in here. So, William Zielinski, is the defendant. He is a police officer, but he also buys, sells, and trades exotic animals. So, in his home, he has a wallaby. I don't even know what the heck a wallaby is, but I'll put a picture here. He's a wallaby, snakes, uh, other reptiles, various animals. So, anyway, his wife April Zielinski comes into the room one day and she sees the cages open and the animals are gone, stolen. So they file a police report. They're trying to find these animals, and it's not only because Bill loves these animals and he feels like no one else is going to know how to care for these animals, but these animals are deadly in the wrong hands. If you don't know what you're doing, they will kill you. So he is like, we've got to find these animals. So Bill Zielinski has a girlfriend, Tiffany. And I'm thinking, oh, how's this going to play out? So apparently, Tiffany and April know about each other and they're okay with that. So on the night of this has to do with a shooting. So on the night of the shooting, April and Tiffany and Bill are all there at Bill's home, you know, mingling, really trying to find these reptiles. Tiffany has 3 children: Riley, who's 18, Rowan, who's 11, and Riken, who is 8 or 9. Riken lives with his father. Rowan, who was 11 at the time, lives with Tiffany, Bill, and April. They all live together. Okay. Hey, I'm not judging. Good for you. Sister wives, whatever. Good for you. Okay. So Riley, who's 18, already has a child. Um, I don't know enough about Riley to tell you whether he's married or not married or how old the child is, but he's not living with them. So they suspect Riley of this stolen reptiles. So they get a call that night from a woman named Angela, who was the mother of Riley's best friend, who Riley was with. And she says, "These reptiles are in my basement. Would you please come get them?" So they report it to the police. The police apprehend Riley and Angela's son, and they don't keep them in the jail because of COVID. This is 2020 when this occurred, October 19th of 2020. They don't keep them in the jail. They're like, we're just going to book you and release you. And now Bill's thinking they're going to hold him there to question him, at least, find out where the reptiles are. No. So he and Tiffany get in the car, and well, there's so many players here. What's her name? April stays home with Tiffany's child to babysit him, while Tiffany and Bill go to Angela's house to look for the reptiles that are in the basement. So on their way, they see Riley walking down the street, and he heads down to this one street, and they think he's headed towards someone else's house. I don't know whose house it was. So according to the prosecutor, instead of going to get the animals, they follow Riley. They they get out of their vehicle. Bill grabs his shotgun and a taser, gets out of his vehicle, hands the shotgun to Tiffany, and says, "Hold this on your son. Hold him in place." Now there's a ring camera at this home that they're stopped in front of, and it's one of those that only records if there's movement, and then it only records every 30 seconds. or every 3 seconds. It's usually this footage is disjointed. So what we're going to see on this is that Bill at one point grabs the gun or takes the gun from Tiffany and shoots Riley. Now, I don't think the actual shooting is caught on that camera, but we see everything that led up to it. And you can hear some of it too. Well, I haven't heard it. They didn't play it during the openings. Riley is killed. Then they did play the 911 tape where Bill Zielinski calls 911 and he says, there's been a shooting. We need an ambulance here. He's still alive. He's still awake, but he's been shot in the chest. Yeah, he was dead. He was dead. And one of the prosecutor's criticisms is that neither Tiffany nor Bill Zielinski, the police officer who is trained as a first responder, does anything to save Riley's life. Doesn't do CPR, nothing. Now, if you've shot somebody in the chest with a shotgun, where are you going to do CPR? Like, you got a big wound here. I would think. I mean, I don't know, just my opinion. So, meanwhile, those animals are still in Angela's basement. So then the defense lawyer gets up and he says, accidents happen. This was an accident, a tragic accident. Riley tried to grab the shotgun away from Bill, and that's when the shots went off into his chest. And it was at a very close range. In fact, the prosecution's argument is it was held to his body, his skin. And that's why there's DNA from Riley on the gun. The defense says there's DNA on the gun because he tried to grab it. So he says, Bill just wanted to find his animals. He loved those animals. That's all he was trying to do is find the animals. And why didn't he go to Angela's house? Why is he messing around with Riley? Okay, I'm deflecting. He said, in the wrong hands, these animals are deadly. And this was said by the defense attorney to offset what his client, Bill Zielinski, said at the scene or said to someone during a text prior to this, that someone just wrote their own death sentence. And the defense is saying this to say that, he didn't mean I'm going to kill you. He meant those animals can kill you. So today will be the first day of testimony. So I'm curious to see how this case pans out. So this is for the death of Riley, Tiffany's son. And so apparently we're going to hear from Tiffany. We're going to hear from April. We're going to hear from Rowan, the 11-year-old. Should be interesting, right? Okay. So that's the show for today, guys. A lot of information. So much. There's either feast or famine in the trial world. We're either not having trial or we're having trial. So Wisconsin apparently this court did not recognize Juneteenth yesterday because they had court. So I don't know that this holiday is as widely accepted yet as they would like it to believe. Because I got mail yesterday. I got mail. So I don't know. Anyway, don't forget, become a member or Patreon and before tomorrow at 7 p.m. And I'll put you in the drawing for one of the diamond paintings. And if you're not a diamond painting, why not? Try it. You might like it. All right. Love you all. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye.